Welcome back. In many ways, this week was a Rorschach test. Republicans might be overjoyed about President Trump's first foreign trip to Saudi Arabia. It rolled out the red carpet as the president urged Arab leaders to drive the terrorists out. He met with the Pope, lectured NATO allies to pay their fair share. Democrats, on the other hand, see a president who failed to mention human rights to the Saudis, offended our closest allies. And then there was the Montana congressional race. A Republican won, and body slamming a reporter for asking a question about the CBO score on the Republican health care plan. Joining us for our analysis of the week in Washington is Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. State Representative Joe Gruters of Sarasota. He was the co-chair of Trump's Florida campaign, and Kevin Griffith, the vice chair of the Sarasota County Democratic Party. So, Joe, is it safe to say Republicans like yourself are overjoyed about how things went overseas this week?
I don't know if overjoyed is the right word, but I think that, yes, to get him to have President Trump go overseas in his first official the tour internationally, I thought it was a huge success so far. I think he's representing America well. I think he's laying the groundwork, which will hopefully be a successful foreign policy. And I think overall people are pretty happy with him here at home. I think that he's proven, is reasserting America in our place as the world leader.
Kevin, you see it the same way?
No, hardly. I would say, with the Montana race that happened last night, and I will admit that Democrat spirits were high in that, although that's a race where President Trump won the state by 20 percentage points, and the Democrat came up short, I think 6 or 7 points last night. But in all these races, whether it's Georgia, Kansas, which was before Montana, the Democrats have outperformed what President Trump did. So I don't see it the way Joe did. On the international stage, going to Saudi Arabia and doing arms deals with the Saudi Arabians, I don't know if that's a win per se. Those never seem to turn out the way we wish they do. I know the Saudi Arabians are the ones who, in the 1980s, if my memory is correct, armed Saddam Hussein in the war with Iran. It always just gets muddy.
And what's crazy about that is, remember, President Obama was the one who bowed to the Saudi king last time he was there. Certainly, Donald Trump did a much better job. He's representing America's interest, and I'm proud to have him as our president.
When it comes to the NATO summit, again, this is something that people might see two different ways. When President Trump says, hey, folks, it's time to pay up, a lot of people would agree with that. On the other hand, the criticism was that they have been paying up over the last couple of years, and that the way he went about it, Mark, showed, the allies in Europe who we do need and who have come to our defense, that America is not the greatest friend that they thought America was.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he's kind of showing his ability or desire to lead from the front. I mean, that's kind of what, I wouldn't say he campaigned on, but what he, sort of his mission, and he clearly did that, it looks like.
You say lead from the front. There was this video of him pushing past the Prime Minister, I believe, of Montenegro, because you get the feeling among the European leaders that America is not the leader of the free world. I mean, they talk about that with the German Chancellor right now. Joe, when you hear that coming out of Europe, what's your reaction?
I think there's no question that America is still the leader of the free world. I think Donald Trump represents as well. I think I think even the Prime Minister said it wasn't a big deal. And I think Donald Trump, and I think whoever our American president is, whether it's Obama, Trump, Clinton, anybody, they should be in front. We are the leader. We should make these guys pay their fair share. They've been paying. But the problem is sometimes you got to put your foot down. America should not be the primarily responsible for the overall burden of NATO and the defense of all of our allies. Everybody has budgets. They all got to contribute. I'm glad Donald Trump is making that a primary point of his visit, because at the end of the day, the question is we have our own priorities here domestically, and I think that if we want to balance the budget at some point and get things under control from a fiscal policy standpoint, we have to do that sooner than later.
Kevin, do you agree?
Well, Alan, the issue here is in the juxtaposition of going to Europe and scolding our allies while at the same time going to Saudi Arabia, where I feel like if it was a Democratic administration, we'd be here listening to Joe say, well, there was no mention of human rights while we were in Saudi Arabia. If I go to a McDonald's in Riyadh, which is a city in Saudi Arabia, men enter through one door and women enter through another door. It's totally segregated. The rights there are something that are anathema in many respects to the United States. And so I just feel like in this instance, it's more cheerleading for the administration and not the actual policies.
The most basic human rights of all is the right of life, and certainly the Democrats get a big fail on that.
Well, okay. What a segue that is. Stay with us. We are just getting started. We'll pick up on our discussion of the week in Washington right after we check our weather. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing the week in Washington and President Trump's first foreign trip. Our guests tonight are Mark Gordon of the Business Observer, State Representative Joe Gruters of Sarasota, and Kevin Griffith of the Sarasota County Democratic Party. And Mark, I'm going to start with you because despite what's happened overseas with the president's first trip, the president still has a lot of problems here at home. Just last night, news broke that the FBI is focusing on Jared Kushner, his son-in-law and senior advisor, over not only his meetings with the Russians, but also whether or not there was some kind of coordination in terms of the 2016 presidential campaign. What do you make of that?
There's definitely a lot of noise going on right now. I mean, I think, you know, I make of it in terms of what I write about the business community. I think business owners, entrepreneurs, they want more certainty in the economy, and a lot of those things have been pushed to the sideline because of all this noise going on. You know, whatever political side you're on, he's not able to go work in terms of health care or tax bill, and I think business owners want more certainty in where they're going with their businesses.
In fact, Richard Sterner, our financial person, noted that to us, that ever since the election, the stock market had been on a roll, but it has slowed down because of uncertainty, because they thought they knew what they were going to get with tax policy and infrastructure and so forth. And now that agenda seems to be off to the side because you have a White House that is in crisis and a Congress which seems now preoccupied with investigating that, Joe.
Well, it seems like every day the Democrats come out with something else to try to disrupt the process, to disrupt the flow. They don't want things to move forward. They want to completely undermine the president and everything he does.
You're not saying this is a total creation of the Democrats. You don't think that how the president has responded to some of these questions, the firing of the FBI director, the reported request for the FBI to stop the investigation?
The good thing is you haven't seen Trump tweet, right, on this international tour that he's been on. I think what we have to hope for is let the president do his job with Congress. Let's try to get some of these deals done. I think that his agenda will continue to keep the economy moving. What's amazing to me is the optimism that exists in this country. People are starting to expand jobs again. People believe that we could do better. And I think it's a result of some of these tax policies that hopefully will get implemented. I think the president's done a great job. I think that, you know, I, for one, let these the investigations take its course, because I think he'll be cleared at the end of the day and we could all move past it. But the problem is what I think the problem in D.C. is listen, when you're trying to drain the swamp and change things, people are going to resist. There's a lot of Obama officials still around trying to disrupt him. The Democrat elected officials, I mean, these guys are out to lunch, and we have to do everything we can to make sure we can move the country forward, and that's what should be our focus.
Kevin?
Well, it seems like a lot of these are self-inflicted wounds on the Trump administration by members of the Trump administration. And let's remember, this wasn't unpredictable. Jeb Bush called Donald Trump the chaos candidate, and it's frankly been the chaos presidency so far. Now that we have Robert Mueller in place, I think we should let him do his job and see where it leads.
Let me ask you all this, because in the wake of all these investigations, the Democrats nationally believe that they have a shot at winning Congress in the midterms. And in fact, they have put Vern Buchanan on their target list, which is something that they have not done the last two congressional cycles. What basis do you think the Democrats are doing that? Do they have any polling that shows that Vern is vulnerable, or is this just wishful thinking?
Well, I think it's based upon the national analysis that have been done. I know 538, which is the website run by Nate Silver that does statistics, has put out some statistics recently based upon, again, Kansas, Georgia, and Montana. Those races where, although the Democrat didn't win, or in Georgia they may, they've outperformed what Donald Trump winning percentage was by, on average, 15 points. So I know last night Trump won Montana by 20, and the Democrat lost by 6 or 7. So that's 14 points.
Joe, you're laughing. I'll give you a chance to respond, but then I want to move on to one other subject.
Well, I'll say that the chance that Vern has a competitive race is there's zero chance in that. As a matter of fact, I think that anybody to target Vern as somebody who may be vulnerable is completely out to lunch, and they have no idea what's going on in politics. Vern has been reelected overwhelmingly with bipartisan support. He's a man who really represents the entire district. I think he's not a guy who, listen, I'm the Republican chairman here in Sarasota County, and I will tell you that I think that his approach to politics and policies is not a partisan one, and I think he does what I think is in the best interest of the people. So as a result, I think he's been rewarded with large re-elections in the past, and I think he'll go on to win by 10 in this one.
Let me just make one point. Vern Buchanan voted for the new health care bill. It has, last polling us all, 20-some-odd% approval. The Democrats are going to hold him accountable.
Okay. There is one other issue I want to get to, and that goes back to the special congressional election in Montana last night and what happened the day before with the Republican candidate body slamming a reporter who was trying to ask him about the Congressional Budget Office score of the new Republican health care bill. I want to read you a quote by Congressman Mark Sanford, a Republican from South Carolina, who said today, respectfully, I submit that the president has unearthed some demons. I have talked to a number of people about it back home. They say, well, look, fine. If the president can say whatever, why can't I say whatever? He is giving them license. This is total weirdness out there. Mark, as a journalist, are you deeply concerned about what we saw?
I'd say as a journalist, but also as a human being, I'm not sure anybody should be body slamming anybody else. You know, it's not good behavior at all, but definitely as a reporter, yeah, I mean, I've been yelled at press conferences and criticized, but I've never been attacked physically, and that's a big concern, sure.
Joe, tell me why the Republican reaction on Capitol Hill was tepid about this. Nobody was outraged. The speaker did say some things, but many other Republicans said, well, look, you know, people are angry.
I think a lot of people don't know the whole truth. But listen, if the guy body slammed a guy after a question, I think if that video ever surfaces and it shows that the guy did assault him and he's guilty, maybe he should resign. You know, I think freedom of the press is important. I think violence is a terrible way to go. I think the attack a member of the press, even when asked a sucker punch type question, is wrong. And I think the guy should be held responsible. But listen, at the end of the day,
what was the sucker punch type question there?
It was the last question about the score, about the health care bill. But I think that my understanding is that question was not supposed to be asked. It was already asked. He was asking again. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. This guy was wrong to put his hands on a reporter. I think, listen, you blame the voters. The voters of Montana put this guy back in to represent them in Congress. He's there. They elected him. They could unelect him. But even after all that, he was elected. So there you go. Blame the voters.
But you know that there are people who are watching this right now who might say, hey, I have no problem with it.
Alan, that was going to be my point, is that we've come to some place in our country right now where there is a segment of people who say they just have either tuned out, or they say good, or they don't care, or they even support this. And it's, you know, it can be used for political expediency at this point, but at some point down the road, that's what differs the American ideals with countries that have totalitarians and dictatorships. And it may seem hyperbolic right now, but those are the differences. An open and free press is very important.
And we're teaching that type of attitude on college campuses as we try to stifle free speech of conservatives who go to speak on campus. You know, the problem is
but it's physical violence here, Joe. Physical violence.
If you look at where some of these conservatives have spoken, where these guys are taking violence to the streets, to some of these campuses, I agree. Violence is never the answer. And as a matter of fact, if anybody commits these acts of violence, they should throw the book at them.
Mark, we have less than a minute left, but I want to give you the last word. As the journalist here, are you concerned about where this is going?
Definitely concerned. I mean, I think, you know, again, Joe made a point, well, Montana voted him back in, and that's true, but it kind of loosely endorses the idea that that's okay. And yeah, it's not okay to body slam anybody, but certainly from a journalist perspective, it's a little bit scary that that's out there.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests about the week in Washington, plus what some of our viewers are saying about last night's topic, housing discrimination. Welcome back. What can President Trump's first trip abroad tell us about how he will represent the U.S. to the rest of the world? What should we make of the administration's budget? And is the new congressional budget score a deal breaker for the GOP health care bill? Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. Mark, let me ask you this. I mean, what are people saying to you about the Republican health care bill right now? The Senate is going to totally rewrite what the House did, and it doesn't seem that Obamacare will be repealed and replaced anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people think it's going to be repealed or replaced, or at least in a big way. And I think there's confusion, at least from business owners. We use the word uncertainty, but I think there's confusion as to what the bill is going to be and what is going to be required of them in terms of their employees.
And Joe, are you concerned as the president tries to deal with the Russia investigation? He has hired his own personal lawyer. It seems some of the closest members of his staff and his family are now under the spotlight here, that it is going to impact his ability to promote his legislative agenda?
I don't think so. I think one of the most important things is to continue the optimism that exists economically to make sure, listen, when somebody has a job and they can be a good provider for their family, that goes a long way in helping all of their problems. We have to continue to try to drive the economy forward. The problem with Obamacare overall is it's a loser, and healthcare premiums are going to continue to rise. Insurance companies are going to continue to exit the marketplace. And I will tell you, as somebody who was on Obamacare for a while, it's a drain on the middle class. We used to have a great plan. When we shifted to Obamacare, a large portion of our expendable income went to pay for our health insurance, and then we had this huge deductible. It's a loser for families. We have to do something. If nothing changes, the system will implode upon itself, in Obamacare will end anyway. But we have to do something. We should embrace President Trump, his agenda, because he'll do what's right for America and everybody will win.
Kevin, you get the last word.
Well, kicking 23 million people off of health care, having them lose their health care, is not a winning strategy, first of all. Second of all, the Trump administration is doing everything it can to make Obamacare fail. The Trump administration has indicated to insurance companies that the $7 billion that they would refund to those insurance companies for covering certain people that are covered, that they're just not going to reimburse. Well, of course the insurance companies, under that uncertainty, might flee the market.
All right, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about last night's topic, fair housing and discrimination. Last night, we shared a disturbing voicemail to a Suncoast realtor asking her to, quote, keep it white. While a report from Manatee County and the Bradenton Housing Authority shows low to moderate levels of segregation in our area, civil rights groups tell us they frequently hear reports of discrimination for buying and renting homes. Here is what some of you are saying. Judy Vincent Osfine writes, as long as people pay their rent, they should be allowed to live wherever they want. Mona Farmer writes, they also use that 55 and up designation to keep people out, and they don't have the tax deferral paperwork if it exists. And Billy Brooks Jr. writes, you have to ask yourself, do you really want to live by bigots and degenerates? Do you really want to rent from someone who doesn't see you as an equal but can take your money? Stay woke. What do you think about the president's trip abroad and the week in Washington? Join the conversation by visiting our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, you can watch past Roundtable discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Mark Gordon is the managing editor of the Business Observer. Joe Gruters is a state representative for Sarasota in the Florida House. And Kevin Griffith is the vice chair of the Sarasota County Democratic Party.